Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. You're joining us for another conversation in the series, Creating Peace in Troubling Times with Kit Miller. Kit, can you hear me?
I can.
Phew, that's a relief, isn't
Exactly.
it? Some of you might have gathered that Kit and I, most mornings or afternoons before these calls, we enjoy some time together figuring out technology.
Mm.
And it's
Mostly that means that Thomas is figuring it out, and I'm just a presence wanting help.
Well, it's good that we have arrived on time today and smoothly. But as always, let's all take a moment to begin in gratitude. Would like to invite you all to just take a moment to think about something that you're particularly grateful for in this moment or on this day. Kid, have you got something that you're grateful for at the moment?
Mhm. Mhm. Um, the sun streaming in the window where I'm sitting. I kind of feel like a lizard on a rock in a way. Um, I'm in the extraordinary city of San Francisco right now, which feels like a wonderful place to be. And um, and I'm in the home and having one of my wonderful friend Mark here with me right now, whose company has been a joy for me since the night before last. So I'm just
Hmm.
got a big bouquet of gratitude and gifts in the moment. How about you, Thomas?
Well, I'll share mine in a moment, but if you'd like to share yours, as always, we'd love to hear from you. So you can type that in if you're on the line, and you can share that in the questions. Just something short, something whatever you'd like to share with us now. And if we don't read it now, we'll get to it later on. But I'm particularly also grateful for friends and friendship. Um, I'm with my friend Tim Norton at the moment, and when you're with really good friends, um, the amount of support that you realize you get from those friends on so many levels, from joy and delighting in and experiencing life together, from some quite deep emotional support to helping each other with food and offering each other food. All levels of friendship. I get so much
Hmm.
support and nourishment from. So I'm particularly grateful on this day for friendship. I don't think we gave people enough time to type in, Kit, because no one's finished typing in yet. So we shall come back in a moment. But Kit, what would you like to talk about this day?
What I'm really inspired to offer to everybody is really bringing gifts from a week or 5 days. I had the privilege of spending last week in Ghost Ranch, New Mexico, with Joanna Macy, who's just one of the most uh, just damned useful humans I've ever met for my life, and her colleague and my friend Annie Simmons Booker and the team and all the amazing gathering of 60 people there, who came together to do a week of really deep work and knowing how can we, be collectively useful in such times of change, in what Joanna calls both the great unraveling and the great turning, and all of it happening all together. So I received so many riches from the time, and just wanted to sort of, and have been marinating on them and thinking about them and talking about them with wonderful friends like Mark. So I just have kind of a handful of things I would love to offer to people on the call, and have a chance to just to engage with each other and looking at some of those ideas.
Mm,
Um, and the thing I'm especially interested in wanting to look at today is steadying our minds in relation to fear. I'd especially love to chat about that. and wanting to just pause and see if there's anything you want to add, Thomas, or if there's anything coming in from any friends on the line.
Yes, we have one here. Grateful for my parents, immigrants from India and Ethiopia, who continue to accompany me and guide me through living in the United States emotionally. That's a wonderful one. Also grateful for my friends, such great support to me also. So just a couple in at this point. Like people are hopefully sitting at home in bubbles of gratitude as well. But this sounds like a very important conversation to have and things for us to think about. My wife, who you know, Jen, is quite concerned at the moment with things that are happening in the US and um, some of the decisions and executive orders and things that have been happening there at the moment, and this need to not be afraid and to also realize that other people are afraid for very different reasons, be it from the unknown, from people from overseas, people of different backgrounds or religions, and as you said, as we just spoke about briefly yesterday, this fear dividing us and separating us and not trusting each other is a sharp tool that can be used by fascist governments or even governments that have a slight desire to achieve aims. You know, dividing and conquering is not a new thing in the human toolbox for getting change a different way than how we like to get change in the world. So I'm very interested in hearing about your thoughts on fear and what we can do to build trust with each other.
Thank you. Yeah, so I want to invite us in sort of in the company of all the people who worked with Joanna last week, all the seen and unseen energy all around us. I want to like invite us to spend the next little while looking steadily at the emerging possibility of the rise of totalitarianism or even a police state here in the United States and elsewhere. And what does that mean? And I want to also do some courageous imagining with you all today about what it would take to bring a peaceful and alert and caring presence to any situation that we have going on in our lives, from conversations with friends and colleagues who see things differently to being arrested or incarcerated, even killed because of what we want to stand for. So that, there's a huge range of how we might engage with these conditions. And I want to, and before we kind of get into the details of looking at that, I want to say that one thing that keeps me particularly rooted and grounded right now in a sense of sort of openness or curiosity relates to something I've been thinking about for some months from Peter Senge. And if anyone of you want to look up Peter Senge, his last name is spelled S-E-N-G-E. He's a systems author and thinker, was engaged at MIT for years, and may still be, honestly. I don't know. I haven't spent the time to look him up recently. He wrote some really major books, one of them called The Fifth Discipline. And he thinks a lot about systems. And I remember reading something he wrote years ago, which captured me and is with me strongly now, which is, he said, right before a system changes, it furiously tries to do what it's always done in order to hold off the change. And for me, sort of instinctively or intuitively, I wonder if what's happening right now, both here in the United States as well as elsewhere, is the furious trying to hold off a change that may be preceding a huge transformation as we move from a white-dominated, patriarchal, essentially sort of colonial holdover system to something else, something that where men and women are valued equally, or people of all races, colors, religions. We may I wonder if this furious, attack, effort to retrench, that's not just in the United States, but in many countries, it relates to that. So I'm just super interested right now, and I just keep having this image of, are we just about to, cross over the top of the mountain? This mountain we've been climbing for several hundred years, with colonialism and patriarchy, and are we about to just get over to the other side of that? Could we be about to? And this feels like an especially important time to be wholehearted in what we might offer, whatever our offering is. Maybe it feels like a small offering, maybe it doesn't, but we just don't know. We just don't know what's going to unfold in the next few years. But what I think we can trust is that every one of us, what we can do could be significant. I think I've said before in these calls, one of my favorite Gandhi quotes these days is, Gandhi said, "Whatever you do may feel insignificant, but it's important that you do it anyway." So maybe your thing is go back and mending fences with the people in your lives. Maybe it's doing tax resistance. Maybe it's writing a letter of support to the mayor of your city saying thank you for standing up and being a sanctuary city. Maybe it's writing letters to the mayors of all the sanctuary cities and saying, I don't live here, but I'm proud of you. Whatever. What's the thing that we can do? So that's what I want to explore. But that's my context for it, is this kind of real curious, open, we don't know space. So I'll stop there and check to see how that.
Super interesting, and I before I just make a comment on that, of course, at any time, you all who are listening can ask questions and can write your own comments and thoughts, or add to that if there are other books that you've read, or if there are things that you've been noticing recently. Please do share them with Kit and myself at any time. There's this other idea called an extinction bubble, which is that same thing about the system right before it's about to end or change. It sort of fiercely tries to grab onto what it is. So I'm hopeful that this is what is happening in this case. And I think now more than ever we have people around the world who are better educated, who have better access to information, who are thinking more critically than they were, say, in the 1930s or 1940s. So I'm very hopeful that we're seeing a system try to hold on to it. And I've said to many people recently that even these what we might deem to be disastrous things that are happening, be it the Trump administration sort of taking down climate change pages, it's bringing all these issues to a head for us sort of finally to kind of deal with them and, as you say, cross the mountain. So I'm very hopeful that we are getting to a point where we've got enough people who are wanting to change that the old systems won't be able to hold on, and we will be successful at this time with this much sort of force against us to overcome that. And looking at the women's marches that happened all around the world the other week, and how nonviolent and peaceful and how much love was there, super inspirational. And when you've got that force of love working on helping to change that system, I think it's going to make a real difference this time around.
Yep. So I want to bring a couple of ideas and tools to the conversation that I hope will be supportive. And one is a breath practice that I really enjoyed hearing about, that I'm going to be bringing back to my colleagues at the Institute and bringing into the schools work that we do, which comes from a woman who worked closely with Thich Nhat Hanh. And so this quick breath practice that she taught, I'm going to suggest that we might just all do it together, because I've been enjoying playing with it, and my friend has been as well too, and we've both been noticing how good it feels, which is just to extend your exhale 2 or 3 beats longer than your inhale. So if we could just spend a minute kind of noticing whatever length of inhalation that you have, if it's 4 or 5 beats or seconds, just extend the exhale just a little bit past that, 2 beats, even just past that. And that is a way especially if you're having time feeling really anxious or fearful, or I'm hearing from a lot of people saying, I'm waking up at night and my mind is racing. This is one thing that we can do. We can partner with our body with the amazing technology of our breath and let our bodies know that, we're together here. So I'm just going to invite you to take that inhalation and then exhale and just extend the breath, just like I said, an extra 2 beats. And if you'd like, I'm going to invite you just to practice that even while we're with each other for the next 40-ish minutes or so, and just kind of play with that and see if that's a way to really help your body mind be at one. So that I just wanted to bring that as a first offering for a way that we can begin to really take care of ourselves in a deeper way. And the other thing I wanted to ask as a way to start also is if you would be willing over the next couple of minutes to just reflect on and then maybe type some ideas, or what are the internal and external conditions that support your best self to emerge under stress. Every one of us has funds of knowledge. We have every one of us to survive life events that have been difficult, challenging, heartbreaking. We already know. We already have some ideas. So what are some of the internal and external conditions that support your best self to emerge under stress? Let's share that with each other in the context of this call. I know we have ideas. There are some things that we spoke about, on ways to take care of yourself during even the hardest times. And I think that was something that I shared in the first gathering of this webinar. The things that I found out, especially in the months of just trying to be willing to stay alive after my beloved daughter Molly died. But I know that you know those things for yourself too. So I'd love to hear some of those ones for you. While you're typing or thinking or just breathing, I can say a couple of those things about that I don't believe my thoughts between midnight and like 6 o'clock in the morning, roughly. Whatever the middle of the night is for you in your sleep schedule, that's what I'm talking about. I don't believe my thoughts in the middle of the night. I just look at them as my brain doing its thing, and I just let it go. And just think, if this thought is still with me very strongly in the morning when it's time to get going, then I'll respect it and pay attention to it then. But if it's the middle of the night and my brain is just buzzing, then I'm just going to just look at my brain, thank it for doing its job, but not believe my own thinking. I'm going to pay attention to what nourishes me. Colors, flowers are two of my favorites. Any saturated deep color makes me happy. The presence of little people, dogs, birds. We all have things that just make our heart happy and willing to be here. That's an important thing to know during a hard time. It's not unimportant. That's important to know. We've also talked earlier in this webinar about the fluidity of feelings, and so if there's feelings emerging in you, I'm just wanting to remind you again that any feeling that emerges and arises naturally really only has a lifespan of a minute or so. If it continues, a feeling of fear or anything, even of hatred that arises in response to something that you hear that just feels like difficult or shocking, remember that there's that fear, that feeling that arises organically in the body. If it continues after a minute or two, then that's really your thoughts continuing to feed it, not your organic response. So you can just choose. Do I want to keep, do I want to continue to feed this feeling, or do I want to let it go and let my attention naturally come back to the present moment, which it wants to do? So again, these are some of the ideas that were shared earlier in the webinar, and I just wanted to bring them back again because I think they can be very sustaining when our thoughts are galloping and our hearts might be racing. So I'm just going to stop again and check to see if you have any thoughts, Thomas, or if anybody's starting to share any of their resources that they've uncovered in their life.
Mm-hmm. And once again, feel free to type these through. It looks like we've got a lot of people joining by the phone today, Kit. They're probably on the phone, wishing they had a keyboard. But yeah, if you are at a computer and you are able to, you've got any ideas or thoughts, please do type them in. For me, processing things out loud or writing them down. So I'm a big fan of journaling, and I find that when I've got a thought that's going around in my head, to really hear it and to put it down, to articulate it, to really make sure that thought voice has been heard, and then I can respond to it more consciously and with more thoughts, or with decisions, or with either beliefs, or with quotes. And it just, that I find journaling really helps when I can't sleep. Actually, that's the one thing I find really helps, is to get out and just write it down. So thanks very much for that. I'll look at that in the morning. Your breathing exercise, within 30 seconds, had already made me feel calmer. So I think the technology of our breath is amazing. And then the last thing for me is sharing with others. When you once again get something out, let the thought get out and get some support on it, I find that is an immense relief for me personally when I'm struggling. And we've had some people type in now, which is fantastic. Ever since learning mindfulness from books and audios from John Kabat-Zinn, I remember to tell myself, oh, that's just a thought. Taking time for prayer, a quiet every day. Being in nature, a walk in the woods, gardening, being with affirming people. All nice things. All nice strategies.
Mm-hmm. I want to put up one thing that I heard you say, Thomas, that I really want to highlight, something that also came through really strongly from the time last week, was I saw how important it was for people to courageously share their thoughts and struggles, to those inside struggles that we're afraid to say. Sometimes we're afraid to say them because we don't want to worry the people that we love. Sometimes we're afraid to say them because we're scared that everybody will think we're crazy. Whatever it is that often prevents us from sharing like our deepest concerns or our deepest worry or fear. And I saw again and again, and I experienced it for myself, that when I was able to say the hardest, scariest thing, what a relieving thing it was, and how much it meant to other people to hear it, how much it increased the trust, even within a group of strangers, to hear people say, you know what, this is my biggest worry. My niece is really struggling right now, as many smart, teenagers and high school and college kids are. They're looking at what's happening in the world, and they're so struggling. And we had dinner together a couple of nights ago, and I said, who can you talk to about your biggest worries? And she had one person that she could talk to, one of her friends. And I challenged her, like I've been challenging other people in workshops, and earlier in this webinar, is if you have one person that you can say anything to, find another, double it. If you have two people that you can say anything to, double that, find four. Make sure that your support networks are redundant and accessible. And practice saying the thing that you're the scaredest to say out loud, because I watched how when I did that, when I shared those most scary thoughts that I had, stuff I felt most fearful about for myself, my family, the future, boy, it opened up a lot of space and energy inside of me. So I really want to encourage you to be courageous and brave and share your fears with some other people. Find the spaces to do that. Don't be afraid to say what you're afraid of. Don't be afraid of fear. Again, just
Wow.
wanting to stop and check.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's um, and the second time I've been reminded of a couple of those things, Kit, so I'm grateful for both of those. I think for those of you who've done a piece Mandala as well, it's a pretty amazing and powerful space in which to share. But I know that when I have shared things that have been weighing so heavily on me with others, I mean, afterwards you go, ah, that feels so much better. I can't believe I waited this long before, getting that off my chest. So, we do have another one come through here actually. I've been through a number of losses that seriously shocked me at the time, but that in retrospect were times of breakthroughs for me. So I've developed an unshakable trust in myself that no matter what happens, I'll somehow manage to muddle my way through it to something better.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
What a wonderful thing to know that you've had loss handed to you enough times and you've survived it enough times that now there's a sense inside of you that's pretty unshakable that I can keep going, I can keep learning. And for me, suffering and loss and hardship, honestly, one of the biggest paychecks from all of that is the learning that I can have, as well as the mercy I can choose to have for myself, for the human condition, for other people. Uh, there's nothing better in, in terms of a harvest from loss or a harvest from suffering than our determination to be brave, our determination to be merciful. Yep. And I want to circle back to what Thomas said earlier in the call, which and then really open it up for questions and comments from folks who are on there with us today. Which is, I want to highlight that one of the things that Joanna said that stopped me in my tracks last week was that she said the sharpest tool in for any government that's interested in oppressing its people is when the people become afraid of each other. When people become afraid of each other, then we just handed the government the ability to control us. So it's critical right now that we not be afraid of each other, that we work very deliberately, very carefully on trusting each other and not being afraid. So whatever you can do right now in that regard is not a small thing. Every act of trust, every act of fearlessness, any act right now that you can make of going back and cleaning up a relationship that's been fractured, where you can experience yourself as having the courage to go back and do that. I believe that that's a very important thing for us to do right now as a collective. So I want to really highlight that we can't become afraid of each other right now. We have to have each other's backs. That was one of the most important things that I heard last week, and I want to express enormous gratitude to Joanna Macy for the life that she's led and the learning that she has and the study that she's done of governments when they decide to oppress populations. And she said, above anything, that's one of the most important things for us to do. That, and have communities of people that we can lean on, turn to, find those communities, find those circles of support. If you can have them within walking distance, that's the most ideal for the kind of support that you named from friends earlier, Thomas. So our support isn't just from far away, but sometimes it can also show up in the form of casserole or, mowing each other's lawn, whatever. But finding those support systems is also a really important act right now. That's not a small thing to do. It's a way to help us collectively raise our courage. If there's 6 people in a circle of friends and one of them decides to become very actively engaged in any way, for that one person knowing that there's 5 people behind them that have their back, that will help take care of their family if need be, whatever that is. Every one of us doesn't have to be on the front line, but everyone on the front line needs to know that they've got people behind them, not in some abstract way, but in a real, tangible way. We need to be there for each other. So I'll stop, again, ask for any thoughts, and then we would love to open it up in the second half hour of our time together for people's thoughts or worries or whatever you want to say.
We have a couple of comments here. One says, what you're saying right now resonates so very strongly with me. Compassion and courage built and supported in community, not on my own. And here's one that came through earlier as a strategy for, it's at 68, I finally found a partner who accepts my confessions of my fears, self-doubts, without judgment. Now I have to look for number 2 and then 3 and 4.
Go. That's great.
Yeah. It's just I just can't help but feel disappointed in our government and governments really all around the world who have used this as a strategy to get us to distrust each other, and whether they've done it consciously or whether they've done it as a matter of convenience. It's a total bummer. So.
Yeah, I want to invite people, if you choose, into another project that a bunch of us decided to take on last week. One of the retreat leaders, Annie Simmons-Booker, had a book with her called The Art of Ho'oponopono. And I don't know if I'm saying that right, so I'm turning to my friend who is a former Hawaii resident. Am I saying that right? Hold on. He's going to say it for me because I can. Yeah, what's it?
Ho'oponopono.
Thank you. It's called The Art of That. And there's this beautiful story in there of a man who, using that art, did some extraordinary healing work at a institute for people who were labeled criminally insane. And it's basically a practice of looking at people who are either suffering or causing great suffering to you, and looking at them and saying, I love you, I forgive you. There's 2 other statements. And so there are people that I was on the retreat last week with, they've been sending pictures. They've been cutting out pictures of the faces of the people who most are breaking their hearts right now, who most are scaring them right now. And you can, whoever those people are for you, that's personal to you. Maybe many of us have a couple of similar faces in our minds. But to really do this radical thing of praying and loving folks that seem to be really oppressing, are so disconnected from their own humanity that they're willing to do these really tragic and scary things. So one thing that we could do is just get radical in our strength to love. And so this Ho'oponopono, oh my goodness, I can't say it.
Ho'oponopono.
Thank you. And if you want to know more about it, I think if you want, just look it up. But there is a group of us that are in, and it would be fun to have many people who are really focused with radical love and changing the hearts of some of these people in power. Some of these people who are, as I said, really making choices that are breaking our hearts wide open. So another thought.
No, thank you. So at this stage, please, if you had any questions about anything we've talked about today, any comments, anything you'd like to ask Kit, please do type it in and share it with us now. If you have any ideas of or examples that you've seen of ways that we can build trust amongst each other, we'd love to hear from those also. I saw one recently which was a husband and wife, both Muslim. The wife originally, they're both American, but the husband converted, and so it's this kind of white hips-looking guy with a beard who converted to Islam, and they decided, I think it was when Trump just read out a statement saying that he thought that the government should, stop all Muslims entering the US. And they made some homemade signs, and they said, "Ask a Muslim," and they set up a table just on the street near their house, and had these signs up, and were giving out bananas and water, and just chatting to people. Um, and this kind of really lo-fi way of doing it. And I mean, I've looked on the internet about why people would mistrust a whole community of people, 1 billion people around the world, and the misinformation and misunderstanding is just enormous. And if people have never met a Muslim and all they're seeing is what they see on movies, or what certain elements of the media are showing them, that's it's once again, it's sad, but it's understandable if that's all they've seen. And so these real examples of people going face to face. So I love anything that's face to face. I mean, I'm a technology person, but when we get face to face, it becomes very, very real. And I know the Ghana Institute has had people with tables and chairs out in their community, just being an air for people who want to share or get any support or chat to somebody. There's Ghana Institute staff who have been there to support the community at a very real, local, informal, creative way. So I love anything that's creative and very real.
That sounds fun to ask a Muslim. I want to go back and see if I can connect with some of my friends at home and see if we can set up tables like that, especially handing out bananas and water. I mean, who can resist?
Right.
My friend Mark just pulled up the 4 things in the practice of Ho'oponopono. God help me. And there's actually some beautiful images online that he's found. And here are the 4 things that we can say to the images of these people. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And thank you. So we can say these things to these images of these people who we're so tempted to despise and hate and dehumanize. And that's what they're doing that's breaking our hearts and breaking, so let's radically love, and we can join in a lot of other people doing it. Hey, you never know.
We have a couple of thoughts coming in from people.
Great, and then I've got a thought coming in then from somebody too. Go ahead.
Oh, great. First one says, "I can't think of any questions right now. I just want to thank you so much for the hope and encouragement I am receiving from this call." And then another one says, "Yes, the amount of fake news that is going on, how can we combat it? Any thoughts, Kit, on how we can counter some of the fake news that's happening in the world today?"
Find the places where you have some sense of connection to trust. I'm a big fan of Truth Out as one. I also love The Guardian. I think for me, I'm just looking to get information from a wide variety of spaces as possible to kind of triangulate perspectives. Because any one of us, we only have the perspective that we have. So for instance, yesterday I spent the afternoon with a friend who, David Hartzell, whose work in nonviolence dates back to the early 60s when, as a 21-year-old, he was so worried about what was happening with the Cold War between the Soviet Union and Russia. He was studying German and living in Berlin. And he organized some of the first citizen diplomacy going into the Soviet Union. So it was a joy for me to spend time yesterday afternoon with he and his wife Jan and my friend Maya Bengtson, and just to hear, because they had just been in the Soviet Union. And so I got to hear directly from him, well, you have a decades-long perspective. What do you think's actually going on? Because there's so much stuff going on, talking about Putin and Trump. What can we believe? And so it was wonderful to hear from David. And by the way, David Hartzell wrote an extraordinary book about his life story. He's, for instance, one of the founders of Nonviolent Peace Force. And so his last name is Hartzouch, Hartsough. So if you want to do something to read inspiration about a very courageous, lifelong commitment to nonviolence, please look up David's book. I don't have the title of it in my brain right now, but I think my friend here is going to keep helping me with information. So one of the things that David said when I asked him about Russia is he said he doesn't think that, from his experience of being there and from what he knows, that he doesn't actually think that the Russian people had anything to do with, necessarily to do with the Trump, or that they are even remotely interested in war. He reminded me that 26 million Russians died during World War II, and that every single family that he's ever met in all of his years of being in the Soviet Union and Russia, he's never met a family that didn't lose at least one person. So he felt strongly that this kind of warmongering energy is pretty much just on the U.S. side, and that people from Russia were not interested in engaging with that. So for me, like yesterday, that was great, because I had the chance to directly speak with someone, who I trust. So we need to keep looking for and finding the places and the people whose words and perspective we can trust.
Great, thank you, Kit. We've had a few questions come in. I'll just say one thing on that briefly. In terms of fake news and news which is, should we say, hate-filled, there's a campaign called Stop Funding Hate, and it's basically encouraging brands and companies who are advertising in tabloid newspapers with, negative headlines, which, very unconducive. It gets the advertisers to pull out of it, and so these media outlets lose their funding. And so, what we saw with Facebook and Google was they cut the funding to these websites that were, had this fake news on it. And I think that's an important step. So if we can pressure companies to stop advertising on these outlets that are not having proper journalism, that would be another step in the right direction. We've had a few things come in. One says, it seems the majority of people, activists, etc., express their power through criticizing, demonizing, shaming, and think that by empathizing they're giving up their power. They don't see any point in empathizing. Can you talk about what power empathy might have?
Well, one of the powers that it has in my life is that it frees me. So instead of having my thinking and my energy consumed with pain and anger and rage and hate, I can engage with my moral imagination through empathy to instead get curious and wonder, and then I can do that and then get busy with how do I want to relate to the current event. My preference is to focus on what I do want instead of what I don't want. I don't want to just be against things. I want to be for things. And I know that George Lakey, for example, the Quaker, longtime Quaker leader in nonviolence, he's written in the most recent issue of the newsletter Waging Nonviolence, he's written a sort of a little thought of 10 things that people can be for in terms of getting active with nonviolence at this time. So I'll share that when we get together next time. I don't have it with me right now. But I want to suggest that we think about what can we be for rather than what can we be against. And the other power of empathy that I want to name is that so many people around us are so distressed and scared and worried. It's locking down their capacity and their creativity. So we don't just have to, this isn't just about empathizing with people whose thoughts are different from ours. This is also being willing to stand with a tender heart with the people that are shoulder to shoulder with us, who are struggling and scared. So it's an empowering, it's an act of support. It's for the people that we agree with, and it's a way to become free in relation to the people whose perspectives differ from ours. And David Hartzell's biography, by the way, is called Waging Peace, Global Adventures of a Lifelong Activist, Waging Peace. He's really a gift to the world. I recommend his books.
Thank you, Kat.
Did you?
I mean, this, yeah, Mark, you want to say something now?
Do you have something Mark wanted to say? Not right now. He's thinking. Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Good. A couple of things came through. One quickly, a comment here. Online, The Conversation, a free website and newsletter created by universities with short articles by academics with links commenting on current issues and research, is a good source of information for avoiding fake news and media sensationalism. So that's called The Conversation. So if you Google that website.
The Conversation?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thanks.
So I think we've had another sort of question come in on this theme, and I want to follow up with it as well. Mandela and Gandhi were pretty famous for greeting their enemies, quote-unquote enemies, with, a big smile and with obviously a lot of compassion and empathy. They didn't walk in there angry and didn't show anger, at least. And so it'd be interesting to hear that side of the importance of empathy, why they thought that empathy was so strong, because I've had another question which says, I don't know if this is the sort of feedback you're looking for, but I don't know how to find it in me to love the people who are proposing and doing things that cause pain to so many. So if you could speak to that would be great.
Yeah, if you don't have it in you, then don't do it. That just means that you're not done with the support that you need to be able to go there. If it's not in you to do it, then don't give up, but just keep looking for the support that you need until you can begin to imagine what it might be like for the other person to be so deluded and in so much pain that somehow they think it's okay, that somehow they believe it's okay to create harm, whether it's harm at a micro scale or harm at the macro scale. One place that's really helped me to think differently about that was reading Dr. Joy DeGrew's book last year called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. She looked long and hard on what made it possible for people who thought of themselves as good people to actually enslave other human beings, and to do many other things to them, as part of that. And she talked about the issue of cognitive dissonance and how we could literally be able to somehow construct reality in such a way that we could see ourselves as a good person, a good Christian, a good father, and at the same time be able to oppress other people. So this is anything that's going on right now at this scale. That's not new. So this is not a new human problem. So that helps me to understand it. It's not new, and that there's delusion involved. There's cognitive dissonance. They literally are not in their right mind. That's a perspective that helps me to be curious rather than hating. And I want to say that I there's been some things that I've read of late that I have literally thought, whoa, I'm having an energy arising in me that I could label hate. I'm just watching that coming up. Hate, rage, bitterness. And wow, there it is. So when it happens, I'm greeting it. I'm looking at it. I'm not above having those feelings. There they are, and all that relates to how much I care. All that relates to how differently I see the world could be But if I return that, you know, I'm thinking about what Dr. King said. Never let somebody bring you down so low as to make you hate them. Hate brings us low. So returning hate for hate, we've got to come up with something better than that. But these are not new problems. My friend here has a question.
I'm just hearing this cognitive dissonance and wondering if what you just described about how these things are rising in you, that's the same mechanism of someone being able to do something horrific and still consider themselves. And wanting to go back to the whole Ho'oponopono suggestion that you forgive and thank, that's a cognitive dissonance exercise. But if you try it, it's amazing the shift that can come. So I'm really grateful having heard you bring that up. I had forgotten it does have possibilities, and maybe now's the time to play the game.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So none of us are exempt from things, and so we can see ourselves in other people. We can see ourselves even in the people who we most want to wipe off the face of the earth. And that's the kind of radical stuff that Mandela and Gandhi did.
Yeah, I'm really interested in this idea of, you know, the case for nonviolence, the case for compassion, the case for empathy. To have it very clear in my mind so that when, you know, people who are very angry, understandably angry, and angry towards certain people, that, you know, I can explore that with them and explore this idea of that, well, there's a way that we can move towards the light together and you know, find compassion for them and what must be going on in their lives or have gone on in their lives for them to think that way or act that way, and see if we can use this idea of radical love to help transform them.
I don't want to have those. Go ahead.
Please.
I was going to say I don't want to have those visitors of anger and rage and bitterness. I don't want to have those feelings want to make a home inside of my ecosystem, because they're very destructive to host. So the feelings come through with the energy of that, and I welcome the energy because there's caring in it. But if they kind of want to stick around, you know, fueled by my thoughts and stuff, I recognize that it's a tremendously costly activity for me, and I don't want to define myself as a political entity primarily or an economic entity. I define myself as a moral entity. So particularly in light of that, playing host to those things in a fixed and static way over time, it doesn't fit with who I want to be in the world, no matter what the world has going on.
We have a few minutes left, and there was one question I'd like to for us to get to before we wrap up. It asks, would you say something about how to connect to people who have a religious stance that say some things that are objectively wrong? I'm open to a dialogue and community across several cultures and religions this week about gender and sexual identity, and wonder how to hold with care all the people in the conversation.
Well, whenever I'm with somebody, I've had a couple of conversations this week myself, like one with a woman who was really adamantly well, I'm not even actually going to go there. I've just had some of those conversations myself, and I think that what I ask myself to do is to first understand deeply, to be able to, you know, separate understanding from agreement. I can choose to understand someone deeply, look for the care, look for the values or needs that's animating their choices, their language, without having to agree. And then the courage is to say, can you hear what it's like for me? Because I actually have a different perspective. And again, I think this is something that I've shared in an earlier part of this series. So for me, it's first to understand and then be understood is essentially, what I'm after. I don't really have other ways of in a dialogue. There are questions that we use in the Conversations on Race project that I've been involved with for the last 4 or 5 years, which are hosted by libraries in Rochester. And by the way, if you're looking for spaces in your community where you can really bring in people of diverse perspectives, I think libraries are really great spaces. They're pretty neutral. Most people are willing to go to a library, unlike perhaps a faith community site or a school site, which for some people, reminds them of being oppressed, or maybe even a local college. Other people wouldn't feel like welcoming. But so libraries are really one of my favorite spaces to hold community dialogues. If you can, many of them you can access community spaces inside of them. And to have questions be ready, the Conversations on Race questions that we use that are particularly rich and help point people towards learning on race is we ask people to get in small groups and talk to each other. What's your first memory of race? So I wonder if a question that could be asked if we were trying to talk to each other across lines of, say, on politics, you could just get people together and say, what's your first memory of politics and the idea of different perspectives in politics, and ask people to share that. And then another question we use in the race dialogues that perhaps could be used in another setting is we ask people, what's it like, or tell us about a time when, in a small group setting, tell us about a time when you were the only person who thought like you in a group or looked like you in a group. What was that like? And to have people kind of remind themselves through their own stories that they can share in a small group and then back into the big group if they choose. And so those might be a couple questions that might help create a space that we could really create some authentic dialogue. Just a couple thoughts.
Thank you, Kit. And that's our time for today. So we'll finish on some gratitude in a moment. But man, I got so many great quotes I wrote down from that, Kit. So thank you so much for sharing, and thank you everyone for your ideas and contributions and questions listening on the call today too. I think this, for me, a key thing that resonated with me was, never let anyone bring you down so low so that you hate them. I think that's keeping our energy high and taking the moral high ground as an apt reminder in these days. So whilst we all take a moment to connect with something that we're grateful for, Kit, perhaps you can think about and share with us something that happened at the Garden Institute recently that you can share with us all.
Thank you. I should be prepared for this, Thomas, because you ask me every time, which I love. And then my mind always gets flooded because there's so many good things. I think what I'm grateful for right now is support, because here I am in San Francisco, and there's just things happening there all day, every day, and there's such a fabulous team of human beings there that I don't give it a second thought. There's stuff happening there all weekend. There's school programming happening. There's so many things happening there, and here I am far away, and it's all going to happen without me. And isn't it wonderful to walk away from something that you care about and not worry about it? I love that. So I'm grateful for the support of everybody back there.
Well, I've had a few things come in. Um, Thank you, hugely useful. Um, Thank you so very much for this call. My system is Karma, Sheila. That's awesome. Thank you, some awesome advice today. And then I don't know if Mark, if he has anything that he's particularly grateful for from the call or otherwise. Put you on the spot there, Mark.
Anything you want to say, Mark, for gratitude?
Just being present for this and feeling connected to something powerful in the change that's in the turning that's taking place.
How about you, Thomas? Anything you want to say you're grateful for before we say goodbye today?
Um,
Or anything else? Anything else?
sure. I mean, I will say, I mean, the work that you do, Kit, and that the Ghana Institute does is always a source of inspiration for me, and the staff and the team that you have working with you there is, yeah, the creativity and energy they bring to that role. And I know you call that a young leaders training place, because everyone that works there is training to be a leader, and I have no doubt that they will go on to do things in the world which will contribute enormously. Um, and I will say one other thing is if you would like to make a contribution to Kit's work and the work of the Ghana Institute, you can do so at their website, and of course you can learn more about what the work of the Ghana Institute is. But we'll wrap it up there because it's 4 minutes past the hour. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Kit. Thank you for on the call, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and weekend. And we look forward to speaking with you all in 2 weeks' time. So thanks again, Kit.
Thank you, Thomas. Thanks for making this happen for all of us.
My pleasure. Speak to you soon.